It's about missing who he was when he was with you. The version of him that felt seen, supported, understood. That emotional comfort doesn't come around often, and when it's gone, the void it leaves is hard to ignore. Sometimes he reaches out because his rebound didn't rebound. He tried moving on thinking the grass was greener, but the connection didn't hit the same. The energy didn't flow. The effort felt forced, and it makes him realize that maybe, just maybe, he underestimated what he had. When someone tries to replace you and fails, it humbles them in ways no argument ever could. Then there's the ego. Let's be honest, some men don't handle rejection well. And when you don't chase, when you don't beg or check in or ask what went wrong, it challenges his sense of importance. Reaching out becomes less about reconciliation and more about reassurance. He wants to know you still care, that you're still affected, that he still has a place in your mind. It's not always malicious, it's just emotional insecurity trying to sue itself. But here's the thing, not every message means he's ready for something real. Sometimes he's bored, sometimes he's lonely, sometimes he just wants to see if the door is still open. That's why it's so important not to read every "I miss you" as a sign of change. Actions, not words, reveal intent. So when he comes back around, the most powerful thing you can do is pause. Don't rush to reply. Don't overthink the message. Ask yourself, what do you want? What version of you is he even reaching out to? The one who waited or the one who evolved? Because sometimes he's not reaching out because he's changed. He's reaching out because you have. And that shift, it's what he never saw coming. When he comes back into your life, it's tempting to believe the timing is right, that maybe he's finally realized your worth, that this time it might be different. But before you open that door again, there's one question you have to ask yourself. Is he serious or just lonely? Because there's a huge difference between someone who's ready to build with you and someone who's just reaching out to fill a temporary void. Loneliness is loud. It talks in the middle of the night when no one else is around. It makes him remember your smile, your laugh, how you made him feel like he mattered. But here's the tricky part. Loneliness can look like love when it's dressed in nostalgia. He might say the right things. He might tell you he misses you, that he's been thinking about you, that he still cares. Maybe he does, but caring and committing aren't the same thing. One comforts him, the other requires something from him. You'll know he's just lonely if his messages are inconsistent, vague, or only show up late at night or when he's bored. If he avoids real conversations about the past, about what went wrong or what's changed, that's a sign. When a man is serious, he wants to talk about the uncomfortable stuff. He wants to show growth. He wants to meet you where you are, not drag you back into something familiar, but broken. Loneliness doesn't want to be alone. Love wants to build something better. Pay attention to effort, not words. Effort. Is he making time for you during the day when life is happening, not just when it's quiet and convenient? Is he asking about your world, your healing, your boundaries, or is he just looking for comfort without commitment? A man who is serious shows up differently. He listens more. He plans. He's present. Not perfect, but consistent. Loneliness fades, but real intention shows up again and again. Not just when emotions rise, but when real life requires presence. Sometimes loneliness drives him to you because you feel familiar, safe, warm. You're the emotional home he walked away from, but that doesn't mean he's ready to be who you need him to be. And here's the hard truth, Dot. It quietly makes him face the weight of the choices he made. It creates an empty space where your presence used to be. And inside that silence, something begins to change. He starts thinking, not only about the breakup or the last argument, but about the way your presence made his life feel. He remembers the comfort. He remembers the support. He remembers feeling understood, appreciated, and accepted in ways he barely noticed before. The mind doesn't store memories like a camera. It stores emotions. And once your daily presence is no longer there to balance reality, those emotional moments often become stronger in his memory than the difficult ones. That's why he begins looking back through a different lens. Here's something many people never realize. Men often don't experience emotional loss immediately. While you may spend the first days crying, reflecting, writing your thoughts down, and slowly working through the pain, he may throw himself into work, friends, hobbies, or distractions just to avoid sitting with difficult emotions. But emotions have a way of catching up. They don't disappear simply because they're ignored. They wait. Then one day, sometimes weeks or even months later, they finally reach the surface. That's why it can seem like he suddenly comes back without warning. It usually isn't because he planned some clever strategy. It's because he's only now beginning to feel what he pushed away in the beginning. And while he's finally starting that emotional journey, you're already becoming stronger. Stay with me because the next part explains why this shift becomes so powerful, and it may completely change how you look at silence. The greatest strength of no contact isn't only what it does inside his mind, it's what it slowly builds inside yours. Every day you stop chasing, you give yourself another chance to rebuild confidence that doesn't depend on someone else's attention. You stop reacting to every message, every delay, every unanswered question. Instead, you begin reflecting on your own needs, your own future, and your own happiness. Little by little, your focus returns to you. You begin remembering that your value never depended on someone choosing you. Your value existed long before they entered your life. That quiet confidence changes your energy in ways people can often sense without a single conversation. You're no longer trying to convince anyone to love you. You're no longer explaining yourself over and over again. You're no longer trying to fix what only another person can choose to fix. That calm distance becomes powerful because it comes from self-respect instead of fear. Many men notice this shift even when they can't explain why. They're rarely pulled toward desperation. They're drawn toward emotional peace, quiet confidence, and someone who clearly knows their own worth. If this feels familiar, keep watching because the next emotional shift is where many people completely lose control without even realizing it. What he usually doesn't expect is that your silence completely changes the relationship dynamic. Suddenly, you're no longer following the emotional pattern he became comfortable with. You're not reaching out first. You're not checking in. You're not trying to restart every conversation. Instead, your absence creates unanswered questions that continue growing louder in his mind. He starts wondering if you've moved forward. He wonders if you're happier now. He asks himself whether you've stopped thinking about him completely. Those questions become difficult to ignore, especially if he believed you would always be there waiting. The uncertainty slowly replaces the certainty he once had, and that's where something unexpected often appears. The more answers he wants, the more he begins thinking about everything he overlooked before. The more he searches for clarity, the more regret quietly begins growing beneath the surface. Not only regret about losing the relationship, but regret for failing to recognize your value while he still had the chance. That's what makes no contact so powerful. In his mind, you stop being someone who was always available and become someone he may never have access to again. So if you're sitting in silence wondering whether he ever thinks about you, remember this. Silence is never empty. It carries meaning. Every peaceful day you continue choosing yourself quietly changes the way he remembers you, not as someone who waited endlessly, but as someone who walked away with dignity, confidence, and self-respect. And people rarely forget someone who leaves that kind of lasting impression. When a man genuinely begins missing you, it usually isn't because of a picture you shared online or the last look you gave before walking away. Those moments fade much faster than people think. What stays is the emotional experience attached to you. Real longing isn't built on appearances alone. It grows from emotions that continue living inside someone's memory long after the physical distance begins. Once you understand that, everything starts making more sense. This isn't about trying to become impossible to forget. It's about creating an emotional connection that can't easily be replaced. One of the strongest emotional triggers is the feeling of comfort mixed with emotional safety. If being with you made him feel accepted, understood, respected, and calm, even through small everyday moments, those experiences leave deep emotional fingerprints that time often makes even stronger. And here's something worth remembering until the very end. Feelings that are genuine don't disappear overnight. Sometimes they become louder only after the noise finally fades. So keep watching, because the next reason explains why certain emotional memories stay alive far longer than anyone expects. That memory stays with him far longer than you may ever realize. You might believe he never noticed the little things, the way you could sense his mood without him saying a word, the way your voice became softer when he was carrying stress, or the quiet support you offered when life became heavy. But those moments often leave the deepest mark. Many men remember the woman who made them feel understood without making them feel judged. That kind of emotional comfort is difficult to replace once it's gone, and after he walks away, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. The outside world feels loud, life keeps moving, responsibilities pile up, conversations become shallow. Yet somewhere in the middle of all that noise, he remembers the calm he felt around you. That contrast slowly grows stronger inside his mind. It's rarely dramatic at first. It happens quietly. One memory leads to another, a familiar place, a favorite song, a random moment during the day. Suddenly he's thinking about how peaceful things once felt. Emotional safety is something people often appreciate only after they've lost it. If this sounds familiar, keep watching, because the next emotional trigger reaches even deeper than most people expect. Another powerful emotional trigger is genuine admiration. Not empty compliments, not constant praise. Real admiration that comes from truly believing in someone's potential. If he felt respected around you, if he believed you saw qualities in him that even he struggled to recognize, those feelings stay with him much longer than he may admit. Maybe you encouraged his dreams. Maybe you believed he could become more than he believed himself. Maybe your confidence quietly gave him strength during moments of doubt. Even if he never expressed gratitude at the time, that emotional experience doesn't disappear. When a man loses someone who sincerely believed in him, it creates a space that success, attention, or pride often cannot fill. He may appear completely fine on the outside. He may continue living his life as though nothing changed. But deep inside, he begins missing the version of himself he experienced while he was with you. He misses feeling respected. He misses feeling capable. He misses feeling seen for more than just what he achieved. That's why admiration carries so much emotional weight. It doesn't feed the ego for a moment. It touches something much deeper that stays long after the relationship ends. Stay with me, because the next emotional shift explains why certain connections remain impossible to replace. Then comes emotional contrast, and this is where memories become incredibly powerful. If you brought warmth into his routine, laughter into ordinary days, kindness into stressful moments, or softness into situations where life usually felt hard, you created experiences that stood apart from everything else around him. Those differences become even clearer after you're gone. He remembers the way you laughed at jokes nobody else found funny. He remembers how your energy could completely change the atmosphere in a room. He remembers conversations that felt effortless and comfortable. Even quiet moments carried meaning because the connection spoke louder than words. When he eventually tries building something with someone new, he may discover that chemistry isn't something you simply recreate by starting over. Emotional connection isn't copied from one relationship into another. Every bond is unique. Every shared experience leaves its own mark. That's why comparisons happen naturally, even when people try to avoid them. Another emotional trigger many people overlook is mystery. The moment you stop explaining every decision, stop defending every feeling, and quietly continue living your life, you leave space for unanswered questions. Curiosity begins growing where certainty once existed. And curiosity has incredible emotional power. He starts wondering what you're thinking, how you've changed, and whether you're happier without him. Those unanswered questions often stay in his mind far longer than any argument ever could. Keep watching, because the final reason brings all of these emotions together. The deepest emotional trigger of all is your presence, not simply being physically beside him, but the emotional presence you offered every single day. The moments you truly listened, the times you stood beside him when life wasn't easy, the way you stayed during difficult seasons instead of only enjoying the happy ones. Those memories carry a different kind of weight because they remind him of genuine connection instead of temporary excitement. Many people only recognize the value of emotional availability after it's no longer there. When he finally realizes how often you supported him without asking for anything in return, the impact becomes much stronger than he expected. That level of emotional closeness can't be recreated whenever someone feels lonely. It grows slowly over time, and once it's gone, its absence becomes impossible to ignore. That's why trying to make him jealous or chasing attention on social media usually misses the point. What stays in his mind isn't the pictures you posted or the words you said to impress him. It's the way you made him feel when you were simply being yourself. Honest, caring, calm, emotionally open, fully present. Those are the memories that continue living long after the relationship changes. And here's the important part. People rarely forget someone who made them feel truly understood. They may ignore it for a while. They may bury it beneath distractions. But real emotional connection has a way of returning to the surface when everything else becomes quiet. And that's why your presence continues to echo long after you've walked away. That's the part that keeps playing in his mind during the quiet hours of the night. Not just your face or your words, but the way he felt when he was with you. That's what makes him miss you. It goes beyond simple nostalgia. It comes from emotional memories that stay long after everyday moments have faded. When you bring emotional safety, honest admiration, warmth, and steady support into someone's life, you don't simply become another chapter in their story. You leave something behind that continues to live in their mind. Some experiences fade with time, others become stronger because they were real. Those are the ones that return without warning. And that's why certain people are never truly forgotten. Their impact doesn't disappear just because the relationship ends. It waits quietly beneath the surface until something brings it back again. If you've ever wondered why someone suddenly reappears after a long silence, keep watching because the next part reveals what is usually happening behind the scenes. The answer isn't as simple as most people think, and once you understand it, you'll never look at those unexpected messages the same way again. Then one day, your phone lights up with a simple message. Maybe it's just, hey. Maybe it's a short reply to one of your stories. Maybe it's a reaction to something you posted weeks after complete silence. And naturally, the first question that comes to your mind is, why now? What changed? The truth is, when a man reaches out after disappearing, it's rarely completely random. There's usually an emotional reason behind it, even if he never admits it. Sometimes it begins with something surprisingly small. A familiar song starts playing while he's driving. He walks past a place where the two of you shared unforgettable moments. He notices someone in a crowd who reminds him of you for just a second. Those tiny moments seem ordinary, yet they can unlock emotions that had been sitting quietly beneath the surface. Before he even realizes what's happening, memories begin returning one after another. He isn't thinking logically in those moments, he's reacting emotionally. That's often why people reach out unexpectedly, not because everything suddenly makes sense, but because certain feelings have become impossible to ignore. Stay with me because the next emotional trigger is even more powerful than a memory. Sometimes it isn't a memory that pulls him back. It's your silence. When you stop sending messages, stop checking his stories, stop reacting to every update, and stop making your presence constantly visible, he notices far more than he expected. Even if he never says a word, that quiet distance becomes impossible to overlook. The attention he once assumed would always be there slowly disappears. The routine changes. The emotional safety net he counted on is suddenly gone. That shift affects more than just communication. It changes the entire emotional dynamic. He begins realizing that access to you is no longer guaranteed. That certainty he once felt is replaced with questions. Has she moved on? Is she happier without me? Does she even think about me anymore? Those unanswered questions can stay in his mind much longer than people imagine. And here's the surprising part. Many times he doesn't even know exactly what he wants. He simply knows the silence feels different now. The comfort of knowing you were always there has disappeared, and that emotional discomfort often becomes the reason he reaches out. Keep watching, because the next reason explains why time often changes emotions instead of erasing them. Then comes delayed regret. And this is where many people misunderstand what really happens. Emotional loss doesn't always arrive on the first day. While you may spend the beginning processing everything, crying, reflecting, writing your thoughts, and slowly healing, he may immediately fill every empty moment with work, friends, hobbies, travel, or endless distractions. For a while it seems like he's perfectly fine, but distractions only postpone emotions. They don't remove them. Eventually life becomes quieter. The busy schedule slows down, the conversations end, the late nights become silent, and in those quiet moments, the empty space you once filled becomes impossible to ignore. That's when memories return with surprising strength. He doesn't just miss having someone beside him, he begins missing the emotional experience that existed when you were together, the laughter, the comfort, the understanding, the simple feeling of knowing someone genuinely cared. Those emotions often arrive long after the relationship has ended, which is why unexpected messages sometimes appear months later. By then, you're no longer the person waiting for answers. You're someone who has grown stronger while he is only beginning to understand what he lost. And that's why timing in relationships can feel so confusing. Sometimes the heart doesn't recognize value until the silence becomes louder than every word that was once spoken.